we are going to speak about pioneering leadership and how that can affect the industry and, in bigger picture, the climate in a sense. Welcome back, all of you.
Thank you.
What a great day we've had together with you. Great presentations, a lot of new knowledge that I'm looking forward to summarize here together with you now, because I think that what we have here is a lot of pioneering things, everything from having been in the industry and been pioneering for many years to trying new things to trying completely new technologies and so on. Why? But let's start there. Why do we actually need pioneering industry? I'm going to let all of you speak up to this one, and I'm going to ask you, Ajit, to start. Why do we need pioneering leadership within this industry?
Well, I think when you're trying to do something that is pioneering, it just makes sense that you have to have pioneering leadership to effect that, right? And I think what we're looking at today in terms of geothermal energy and like helping it grow into a position where it is the go-to renewable is pioneering, right? And therefore, I think pioneering leadership to drive that has to go with it, because otherwise you will default to what has made you successful in the past and in your comfort zone. And to achieve those things, you have to do something different that is pioneering.
Paul, I'm going to go over to you. I mean, you mentioned a little bit, you've been in the industry for many, many years, and pioneering and innovation has been a big part of your success in a sense. How do you stay pioneering for a long time?
Well, I think it's a great question. We always said at Ormat that if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I think that draws a certain personality and characteristic to developing these resources that are the best of the best, but they're very difficult and hard to do. And if you take no's easily, you don't last long in this sector. So I think if we're defining the kind of pioneering spirit as someone who is willing to take on a challenge and kind of fight through tough times and really reap the benefits of, really chasing something that is world changing, then I think we are all have that kind of pioneering spirit in geothermal. And I think that's going to become less and less, because I think as we see more geothermal moving forward and the prices increasing for power purchase agreements, we're going to see more and more people coming to the sector and helping us develop projects moving forward.
Magnus, what do you say? I mean, baseload capital has been considered being pioneering in the industry. Is it scary to be pioneering? Is it fun, or what do you think of the word?
I like what you were saying, Tom. It's something that really chooses you. You see a vision of the future. You see something that is possible. And as you said, you're not doing it because it's easy, but you're doing it because it's going to be worth it once you're there. And you can't wait to show the rest of the world, that vision to become reality. And once you've accepted that challenge, there's no going back. I mean, you can't really not do it. It's crazy, but that's really how I feel about it. And to be honest, we need a lot of pioneers. And I think right now, as we've been talking about, there's so many discoveries in all different parts of the value chain across so many geographies that we will see a lot of pioneering spirit, which is great. But we also need the followers. Like, we want to inspire others to follow. And what we don't want is to have a lot of stakeholders on the sidelines saying, okay, no, I don't care. We want to bring them in too. So that's what I feel into the term pioneer.
Interesting. Gabriella, I wanted to ask you, your younger generation, do you think that geothermal is pioneering enough?
Well, I think there's room for improvement, of course. I mean, we're not a 100% renewable planet yet, so of course we could improve. But I definitely think that being pioneers will be an important part of attracting young and innovative people and talent to the geothermal sector. If you're a young and ambitious person, you won't choose an industry that's looked almost the same for the past decades. You want to choose something where people are brave and dare to take risks, and where people are pioneers, which I really feel that the geothermal industry is moving more and more towards. Just looking at the collaboration with oil and gas now, that's something that we could only dream about a few years ago. So that's that's something that's really fun to be a part of.
Let's take your temperature a little bit here in this group here. If you would grade geothermal industry on a scale from 1 to 10, being absolutely not pioneering and being the very much pioneering industry in the world, what would you grade us as an industry? Let's start with you, Ajit.
Okay. Again, I don't want to always sit on the fence with these gradings, but it depends on the context you look in, but I would say I'm having to go low here. I would have to go with a 4 when I think about it from well construction technology, because in many respects, where drilling wells, we're completing well construction in geothermal the same way we have for a very, very long time, right? And we there are changes afoot, like in terms of all the new energetic startups that are bringing new energy to the industry, and existing players who are now looking at better and more improved ways to do things. Part of that is the climate, right? There needs to be the right climate of investment and the right forward-looking or pioneering leadership, as you called it, that can see a goal that may actually come to fruition way after they are gone, right? To be leading that change. But yeah, my rating would be a 4 based on while we see a lot more opportunity for geothermal, we're still doing many things in the industry the same way. It's starting to change, but it hasn't really yet.
4 from Ajit. What do you say, Paul?
Well, I'll have to go with a 10.
Okay.
And here's why. I think when you look at the industry, and I'm going to focus on the Americas, where we've really been producing electricity for about 50 years. The change in a power plant that you saw 50 years ago to today is as striking as looking at a 1950 Chevy to a Tesla. And the continued improvements in the technology and what makes geothermal complicated, you've heard in this discussion, is that we are more than just a power plant. We're subsurface, we're direct use heat pumps and so forth. And I think having that discussion is great. But the power plants have changed. The resource modeling has changed incredibly significantly. I would say more than oil and gas in the last 50-year period. Now we're trying to kind of break into this new subsurface drilling technique that Ajit is talking about. And I would equate that, I'll go back to my Tesla analogy. What's amazing about a Tesla, when you go visit the factories, they still use a lithium ion, it looks like a D battery. And they package it in a battery pack, and you have a brilliant car using the same lithium ion technology that's been around for a very long time. And they are just now looking to try to say, can we do a bit better battery? I equate that to geothermal. We have really mastered the power plants. We've made them emission free. We've made them flexible. We've made them responsive to the grid the way they need to be. We've integrated them into the regulatory environment. We're seeing states select them and build them. And now we're getting the contract value. The power purchase agreements are coming in at a high enough cost that we can deploy innovative subsurface drilling techniques. And I think this will be kind of another chapter moving forward to say, boy, can we improve upon the drilling techniques, the technology we're deploying down well, and so forth? And the answer is yes, because we're getting more money for those power purchase agreements and contracts that allow us to then spend more money subsurface. So I think when you take a step back, and for those, I'm kind of hurt that I'm no longer young, but those, looking at it, they're going to see such a dramatic change in geothermal. And I'll tell you, go visit power plants. They could not be more strikingly different in the improvement. In Reno, for example, people drive by a geothermal power plant every day and have no idea that it's there. From a marketing standpoint, that's a bummer and hard, and we got to kind of give a big sales pitch. but from a development, environmental footprint perspective, it's phenomenal. And so I think, I'm a silver linings guy, and I think the change has just been very rapid, and I think we're going to continue to see it. And seeing large players like Baker Hughes or folks come back to the sector from the 70s and say, let's do this, let's deploy this technology, is only going to make that happen even quicker moving forward.
Interesting. So an external perspective gives it a 4, an internal perspective from the industry gives it a 10. What about the investor perspective?
I would go for a 4 as well, but rapidly increasing. The future is already here, but it's just not evenly distributed. It's a quote by William Gibson that I usually talk about. We have pockets like in the US, like Iceland, where we have come a long, long way. Then we have other markets where the word geothermal is almost unknown. So we have to solve scalability, I would say. How do we roll out geothermal faster than today? And of course, coming from the country of IKEA, where IKEA was founded, how do we kind of package geothermal as IKEA package tables? And how can we, get the power plants up and running faster than ever before, working smoothly, cost effective, and so on? That's still to be solved, I think. But we will get to that as well.
And how to add the meatballs to that.
Yeah, that's the easy part, I think.
That's the easy part. What about you, Gabriella? What's your grade?
I would probably also go for a 4 historically. And like Paul said, there's been huge innovation on the technological front. But based on the megawatts online, I think geothermal has moved a lot slower. And pioneering and innovation is not just about the technology. Like Ajit said before as well, it's not rocket science, it's rock science. But I still think there's a lot of innovation still needed. Like EGS, for example, there are a lot of the big names out there that I've heard for many years that are now moving forward in a much better speed than historically. So I think hopefully the growth will be more exponential than the very, very slow linear that it has been historically.
Interesting. I'm thinking when I'm thinking of pioneering and pioneering leadership, in a sense, I'm thinking about brave leaders who take risks and chances. Is that something that you might see more of? Maybe is that why you're giving it a 10 as well, Paul?
Yeah, look, I think, again, I guess as the older man on the panel, we did the first EGS project in Nevada that was successful in the United States over a decade ago, Brady and Desert Peak. So EGS is new to some people. It's decades old. And when you look at hot, dry rock done by companies like Altarock, it goes back 20 years. So those technologies have been there. Their cost effectiveness in the sector was questionable 10 years ago. Today, with improved prices, I think we can see more deployment and additional expertise in those sectors. So Ormat pioneered and had the Brady and Desert Peak projects and projects in Germany looking at enhanced geothermal systems over a decade ago. What does their lack or deployment mean? I think we can look at that from a research perspective, but the hydrothermal resources we're still pursuing aggressively. And I think I take a step back just to say energy tends to always be regional. And I have this debate in the US quite a bit. Many people don't know in the state of Louisiana, almost 70% of all the natural gas is processed or moves through the state of Louisiana because it's on the Gulf of Mexico, it's a transition transport area and so forth. And geothermal is going to, typically be somewhat regional around areas like the Ring of Fire and places with a lot of tectonic activity, or where we have continental spreading in Iceland or Kenya and so forth. So I wouldn't measure ourselves against deploying it everywhere. It's not ubiquitous. Like we can't move the natural gas to a certain state, and putting geothermal in some places may not be as cost effective or, needed as other places. But where we are developing geothermal, we're doing it very quickly. And I think, we're going to continue to do so. And the conversation on collaborative, I think, just to maybe bring it back a little bit, collaborative is interesting because we didn't have a lot of people in the sector a decade ago. Ormat was kind of plugging along, and we had a lot of people focused on other technologies. Bringing them back and being collaborative is key, but in having the partners to be collaborative with is also something we didn't have. And so I think the work that you were doing at Baseload and others to bring all these new companies together is going to be very helpful moving forward.
I thank you for that. I do believe that there are a couple of, let's say, comfortable or uncomfortable conversations needed to be had in order to become more pioneering as an industry. What would you like the industry to do more, less, or differently to, let's say, become even more now pioneering than we are today? Why don't I start with you, Gabriella, this time?
That's a good question. If we go back to information spreading, I love the geothermal conferences that we have, but they're very super technical. Everyone knows this. And I think making the information that we want to spread about geothermal more easily digestible for the public, that's going to be a huge part of this. Not just to make everyone know what geothermal is, but also to spread the words higher ups to politicians. And that's going to be a big part of what Paul spoke about earlier, just PPAs getting more of an advantage for us when we want to deploy these projects that the technology has been there for a while. It just hasn't been feasible from a financial perspective. So I think, it's easy to maybe talk about marketing and information spreading as something just in the outskirts of what we're doing here. But I think it's going to play a huge role when it comes to how fast the geothermal industry as a whole will be able to grow.
So more better and clearer communication.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. What about you, Magnus? What would you add?
Well, I would say question the status quo. Question your historical performance and try to challenge yourself in setting new, bold targets. And the way you know if they're bold enough is that you fail sometimes. And as I usually say, you shouldn't make bigger bets than you can afford to lose. So that's the limit, really. You should be able to fail without risking the whole company. But that's really how I think companies in the industry should think about the future business plans. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Paul, what do you think? What would you like to add for us to do more differently or less?
I'll start with the conferences. I mean, I think I agree that they are technical in nature because we're trying to pass on information, and maybe we need to, I think, take a step back and kind of re-envision the conference and say, is there a fun kind of different way to discuss this? I also think, maybe the uncomfortable realization is I'm not sure geothermal will ever be a .com growth industry. And chasing fast is the discussion for our generation, and everybody's trying to do things quicker and faster, and it should be non-linear and multiple growth and so forth. And geothermal's unique. I love the discussion that it's not rocket science, it's rock science. Well, then timing may not be a .com timing, it may be geologic, and trying to drill wells and find resource and do that successfully and with a nod to being environmentally sensitive and so forth takes time and energy. And I think we have to balance the expectation of growth with what we're seeing. And just to give you a perspective, Ormat has been doing this for 57 years. We have a little over 1,100 megawatts that we have developed and operate in our portfolio. This year, we signed contracts for over 300 megawatts. So a third of our portfolio in 1 year. The growth for us will be massively rapid as a developer. Is 1,500 megawatts a lot in a global perspective? I don't, it sounds like no when you're looking at it from the outside in. For us, it will be the biggest task this company has undertaken in 57 years. And that's just in the US, that growth, not including Indonesia, not including Eastern Africa, not including our equipment sales to developers around the world. So, that to us is fast, very, very fast. What does it take to get to another 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts? It'll be stunning. And you asked the question. I think the industry can do it in the U.S. To meet these goals, but we have to do that to show, I think, to the investors and the utilities that this industry can deliver when it's called upon. And if you give us clear guidance moving forward, we can make these projects a reality.
So having resilience continuing to work is also being pioneering in a sense.
Yes, and I think, realistic expectations. I don't think that, I think our product is complex enough. I mean, I think there are improvements in subsurface and equipment and turbine design and air coolers and all the technical things, but it's not as simple as quickly changing the manufacturing process on a PV panel and seeing rapid growth and cost reduction. We have in my opinion, a far superior product that is much more complicated. And developing those projects right takes the time that it takes. We can speed it up. I just think we have to be honest with ourselves. Are we going to, quadruple or triple? The United States has about 3,000 megawatts operating today. How fast or how quickly can we double that? And in the PR marketing world, if we say we're going to triple it and then don't do that, what is the negative impact? So I think we need to be realistic about it. I think we can achieve really quick growth, but we need to keep it in the geothermal bounds.
I remember a quote I read the other day that it was actually from Quays that says geothermal is the workhorse of the next century. Maybe that is something that we can use in marketing as well. Interesting. Thank you, Paul. Sorry.
If I can, I just want to add one more bit that I think is important, because when geothermal produces power 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you want to produce the same amount of power from a 100 megawatt geothermal power plant from solar, you have to triple that. So when you hear numbers for wind and solar, divide them by 3 or triple them to figure out what you need from geothermal. So 1,000 or 2,000 megawatts of geothermal being brought online is the equivalent of 6,000 megawatts or 6 gigawatts of solar. And I think that also needs to not be forgotten, that our product produces so many more megawatt hours a year that what seems like a small project is equivalent to very large wind and solar projects. And our footprint is 22 times smaller than a solar project. So our environmental impact is so brilliant when you compare those.
Maybe something to be pioneering about and telling the story, in a sense. Thank you, Paul. What about you, Ajit, if you would say?
Yeah, and I guess, the advantage of going last is that what you answer can be a combination of everything everyone else said. But I think and to take from something Gabriella said, and is making early and public commitments that are actually meaningful. That's pioneering, and that also can be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because, we're all public companies. Now, then the trick will be not just making those early and public commitments, but actually backing them up with resources that are required to execute on them. So for me, when you talk about uncomfortable and pioneering, those are and I'm stepping back, and it's not about, geothermal per se. I think it's pioneering in many fields. In fact, the entire energy transition is being driven today by commitments that industry leaders have made, but also need to back up, right, with the resources required to execute on them. So for me, that's the uncomfortable piece. And something which I think Magnus said earlier, starting with the goal in mind. Well, part of that is thinking long term, where the fruits of your labor may be enjoyed by others and not by yourself, right? That for me is pioneering.
Well, those are great summarizing words. Is there anyone who wants to say something in the end as a summary now for the people who are watching this, in a sense? Gabriella, any last words?
Maybe going forward as pioneers, take more risks, attract young talent. We need to be more excited in order to do that. What else? Do you have anything, Magnus?
I can just echo, walk the talk. I mean, over-deliver on our promises, but then also push the flywheel. It's really about creating a momentum in the industry, and it takes time, and we will just have to keep pushing the flywheel.
Paul?
I'm very encouraged. I think seeing power purchase agreement signed not only by Ormat but other developers with greater ease and greater profitability is going to bring more investors and more developers to the sector, and I think continue to enhance vendors that can supply better air coolers, better drilling techniques, and so forth. And there is a lot of excitement around geothermal today that wasn't there a couple of years ago. I think seeing the oil and gas sector recognize what we thought was simple, that there's a lot of crossover in the same technology and so forth, is compelling. And I think we need to capture that. And I think the work, Kristina, you're doing at Baseload to have this discussion and figure out ways to continue that and be out in front discussing it is fantastic. And I think we're going to see just unparalleled progress as we bring these projects together, as we see other states and countries realize that they need this resource. I love the discussion that we will be the workhorse. Many people don't know, but in the state of Nevada, where I'm sitting today, 70% of the power in our renewable portfolio standard comes from geothermal. So your apps, solar and wind get all the buzz and so forth. And we need to decide kind of what role we want to have moving forward in that discussion and on Instagram, if we want to be flexing. And I think it's going to be a very exciting time. And I would encourage people to continue the dialogue at these conferences. If we can develop, maybe reduce them and bring more people together and then kind of have a collaborative approach. A lot of the conferences you discussed, there are very individualized technical sessions, and we need to have more discussion about it. Where is the crossover? What can we learn, and how do we blend these technologies as we move forward? I think the future is going to be based upon geothermal, but it's going to have hybrids of geothermal charging batteries. We're doing solar development. It's going to be solar geothermal hybrids like we've seen in Nevada. It's going to be combined cycle geothermal power plants. The innovation is going to continue to pour out. We need to tell those stories. And any way Ormat can be helpful moving forward, you let us know.
Absolutely, we'll do. Ajit, last summarizing words.
No, I mean, I think everyone summarized it quite well, but I think we also need, one of, and many other people have said this, but one of geothermal's greatest strengths can also be a weakness in the sense that you can see a wind farm, you can see, a solar panel installation, but geothermal, with its small footprint and the fact that everything's underground, is invisible almost, right? What will make it visible is that it's the right choice for a developer and the consumer and the buyer of electricity, right? And that's where we can make a difference and where we can do something. I also quickly want to say, there is a lot of opportunity for geothermal now to leverage other types of clean energy, like, for example, hydrogen, right? And use it in some ways as a transportation mechanism to monetize geothermal in a way that's never been done before, right? To help unshackle the geographic restrictions. So it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to allow geothermal resource to be exploited where today it isn't, because there simply isn't a market for it. So I think there's so much opportunity to collaborate both within the geothermal industry and across to other industries, both renewable and both the traditional energy industry.
I would like to thank all the panelists for helping me to wrap my head around this pioneering leadership and the industry. Also thanking for your time and inspiring all of the viewers and me in order how we can move this industry forward in the right way and at the right pace. Thank you very much. There is such a strength when we put great minds together like this.